Why shouldn't we be spoiling our kids? What is it doing to our kids?
If we don't let our kids struggle, have that mental fortitude of, oh, I can figure this out, then where else are they going to learn that? You have to give them opportunities, and that includes opportunities to struggle.
Welcome to the Real Money Podcast. I'm Lisa Chastain, your host, and today's a great conversation about how to not spoil your kids. In the world of wealth, this is a hot topic, and today my guest, Blake Johnson, and I dig deep into what it means to, one, have a family bank, why that's important, what generational mindset is, and how to make sure that you're teaching your kids the fundamentals about money. I get this question all the time, and I'm excited for you to join me and Blake in this really fun conversation. My guest, Blake Johnson, knows this firsthand. He's not only a partner at trusted estate planning attorneys here in Vegas and in Utah, he's helping families and business owners protect what they're building, but he's also a dad with 2 boys and 1 on the way who is doing some things differently, from creating a family bank to raising kids who run their own businesses. He talks openly about that. To early investing, he is disrupting an old conversation about money and entitlement, and we're excited for you to join us today. So let's get started. Welcome to the show. What I really want to share with the audience today, and for those of you who are high income earners and you are on the path to wealth, or you're here because you want wealth, you've got to stick with us, because this is a great conversation about parenting. This is a great conversation about not spoiling your kids, why we do that, why we shouldn't do that. So me on the mindset side, and then Blake from his perspective. And then also we're going to talk about family values and the family banking system. Are you ready for it, Blake?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
We're going to talk about some touchy subjects. And when it comes to money, money is one of the most triggering conversations, which is why I love it, because I love to get in there and poke around. And I'm on the side of the industry, the money industry, on the mindset side of why do we do what we do? And where do these beliefs come from? And what is disrupting in the industry right now? And we're having a lot of conversations where we've got this old paradigm in money, so the Dave Ramsey camp, that is older, more boomer mindset. And those of us that are younger saying, hey, you know what? I don't like this very much. I don't want to beat up on people. And also, let's get really curious about why we do the things that we do versus just taking this advice because some old guy, for lack of a better term, tells us that we have to do it this way. And so I'm a blue collar girl, Blake. I grew up in Las Vegas in the northwest side of town, and I didn't grow up around money. Money was very triggering in my family, and the way that wealthy people were perceived was also very triggering, and the way that wealthy people were talked about was very triggering for people. I've had to bust through those conversations to be able to attract and generate my own wealth, because it wasn't always perceived as a good thing. And so when I hear you say the word spoiled, I'd love to dig into that, because before we jumped on, there's this book out there. If you haven't read it, it's about life insurance, but we're not going to talk about life insurance. I want to talk about the mindset that goes behind it between the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts. And this book called What Would the Rockefellers Do is speaking into exactly what you're talking about, is that these spoiled kids aren't becoming the best kind of kids or people on the planet. And you're saying, hey, we've got to stop spoiling our kids. Why?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack there.
I know. Let's do it.
So I have my own podcast as well, and one of my guests on there, he talked about how our traumas actually carry in our DNA. And so we have, from just my grandfather, lived through the Great Depression.
Yeah.
And so there's a lot of scarcity and other stuff that comes from that. And so you're right. We have to do some work and think through that. And make sure that we're intentional with what we're doing, and we're not just reacting to whatever our history was or what we were taught about money, if it's the wrong thing. So I think that's the first step. And with the Rockefellers, we have the Rockefellers and the Vanderbilts.
Yep.
2 very prominent families, and at one time in history, each of those individuals were the wealthiest people in the world, and still, by today's standards, if you made it modern, they still would have been the 2 wealthiest people in the world. Maybe Elon's close to catching up to that, but like massive amounts of wealth. Well, then how did they handle it? You have Vanderbilt, who just let his kids have money, let them throw all these expensive parties, kind of got one son in the business, and he took over when Vanderbilt died suddenly. But within 3 to 4 generations, all of his wealth was gone. completely gone.
Yeah.
And we're talking about the equivalent of hundreds of billions of dollars today, gone in 3
Yep.
generations. That's where that term shoestrings to shoestrings in 3 generations come from. Pivot that to the
Good to know.
Rockefellers. He comes
Right.
in right after Vanderbilt. There's some history there with, them competing against each other. But, what he did is he's like, I don't want this to be gone. I want this to be a lasting legacy. And so he thought about that. He, one, got his kids involved in his business very early on. And he did a lot of estate planning and structuring of his entities and trusts and everything else. So that way it wasn't ever all just going to one generation and then they were responsible to set up. It was set up in a way that they could profit from it if they did certain things, but they also could borrow from the assets and then go build their own wealth. And there was training involved, lots of education around here's what we believe as a family, lots of family value talks. And they were a very close knit family. And so you still had that wealth preserved and still is around to this day. I think what people who come from nothing and become successful do is they're super generous. They're so excited, like, hey, I have all this. I want to give my kids everything that I didn't have. The problem is, if you do that, how did you make your wealth? How were you successful? It was the struggle. It was going through the times where things were meager. That's what created you and helped you to be successful, to be creative, find avenues and get around different things. If we don't let our kids have those same opportunities, they're never going to develop those skills. It's just like being in the weight room. If you don't ever lift weights, you're not going to get stronger. You have to use them. You have to have those experiences, that slight breakdown in your muscles for it to grow. It's the same thing with anything else in our life. If we don't let our kids struggle and have that mental fortitude of, oh, I can figure this out, then where else are they going to learn that? They're going to come into something and have no idea what to do because they haven't learned along the way. They haven't built those muscles.
And what I was hearing you say, when I picture it in my mind, talking about the Vanderbilts is Schitt's Creek.
Yes.
They were just lavish and they went for it and they had unnecessary things and then they lost it all. And then we have the Rockefellers who.
Well, and the kids' attitude about it too is exactly the same. Like, I think of the episode with the write-off people. You can just write it off. No knowledge of how things actually work.
Just write it off. Yeah, that's true. It's basically free. I remember that episode. And so we all get a laugh on it. But also, can't we say that quote unquote rich people have that stigma? I remember watching Paris Hilton and Nikki, I think her best friend or whatever. There was a whole show about their privileged way of being and how they just had no clue how money actually worked. And that's not everybody that has money. To your point, you and your family are doing it differently. You should check out Blake's LinkedIn page. There's a lot of great content there about how you're raising your kids and teaching your boys and how they still have their caramel apple business?
Yeah, caramel apples are coming up soon. We're gearing up for it.
And so the Rockefellers, to your point, didn't just pass on knowledge, which that was important to them, but one, they made their kids work for it. They could borrow money, but they had to pay it back. So nothing was handed to them as it would be perceived that some rich families do to their kids, is they just hand it to them and then they don't appreciate it. But that culture is changing. That culture of money is changing. And you're having that active conversation about why we should not be spoiling our kids. So let's talk about that. Why shouldn't we be spoiling our kids? What is it doing to our kids?
There's a misconception that the rich just spoil their kids. They hit the lottery from being in that family. The reality is there is some truth to that because they're exposed to more information. They're exposed to more opportunities. And why not? Why should we not help our kids? I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but it's in the way that we help them. If it's just give them everything, that's the wrong way. But like, for instance, in my situation, I couldn't have afforded a law firm. I couldn't have gone out on my own. I couldn't get a loan from a bank. So yeah, it was a huge opportunity that someone else wouldn't have had if they hadn't been, my dad's son. So yes, it's a huge opportunity and there's nothing wrong with giving them opportunities, but I still had to work for it. I still had to pay him back. I still had to make sure the business survived, but it was definitely a big step up than coming in from nothing. And I recognize that. So I think that's where we need to, you know, shift our mindset of you are still helping your kids immensely by giving them opportunities, but we don't want to spoil them. My big thing is entitlement. That,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm developing a program. Hopefully, it'll be out by the time this podcast gets published. But it's called the Entitlement Elimination Program, and it's where I go through and talk about the things I'm doing with my kids about how do you teach your kids about money? How do you teach your kids about business? Making sure they have chores to do. Those chores do not get paid for because that's their rent for living in my house. They need to do those things. And there's all these stats that back it up about
Yep.
how much more successful your kids will be if you may do those things with them. So it just still comes back to that. You have to give them opportunities, and that includes opportunities to struggle. And that's the hardest part because we never want to see our kids struggle. We never want to see them hurt, but we have to let them be in those situations if we want them to actually grow and learn.
I agree. I totally agree. And coming from a different background than you, where we just knew as kids that if we wanted anything, no one was giving us anything. My parents, thankfully, for each one of us when we moved out, we got a couple $1,000s, which came from my great aunt. So thank you. You know, there was a little leg up, but we pretty much knew, hey, our family, there's not a whole lot here other than a lot of love. And I'm grateful for that, right? So that's one of our generational things that my dad is passing down to us is love and connection. Okay, I digress. So then there's I talk about this in my book. It's called a financial set point. We all have our own financial set point. And what I'm hearing you say is that your financial set point was that you didn't struggle, like your family wasn't struggling. I don't know your whole family history, but your dad was able to say like, hey, I'm going to support you here. But it's not I'm going to give it to you, Blake. You have to do certain things in order to earn it. And one of those things is you're going to buy me out and you're going to make a successful business happen. But your financial set point is different than some other people's financial set point, right? What I see a lot that happens is when someone's financial set point is from struggle or poverty and they come into money, they have a propensity to reverse model that with their kids and give them everything because they didn't have it. But that's not necessarily helping your kids either, because they're not getting that patterning, that history of you need to work for it. And then all of a sudden they wake up at 22, 23 years old and they're like, what the fuck? What? I didn't have to work for this. And these are the people that I'm seeing in my office when it comes to money mindset, trying to make sense of all of this. And what I love about the work that you're doing is you're bringing your kids up through being intentional with this is how you invest. This is how you read a profit and loss statement. So first of all, parents, you need to know how to do that yourself. But the best thing that you can do is now transfer this into your kids' worlds. How are you doing this real time with your kids?
There's a lot that we're doing, and it takes time. I think the biggest thing is starting somewhere. There's so much around we don't talk about money.
Totally.
Money is a taboo topic. Why? Why is it
Yeah.
such a taboo topic? We use it every single day. It's a big part of our life for planning. It helps determine whether we're going to have a successful marriage or not. And so why are we not talking about it? And what I found is that the most successful families that have things continue, they talk about money and they talk about it a lot. Not in a sense of we have so much, we have this, but it's here's how you can utilize money correctly. Here's how we're being charitable with what we're doing. Like you said, a profit and loss statement works. My favorite thing is when clients come in and they're like, I just don't want my kids to know how wealthy we are. You live in a 20,000 square foot house. I'm pretty sure they know.
You don't
Are
think
you
they
kidding
know?
me? Are you kidding me? Like, yeah, they probably don't know the extent, but they know. They know that you're well off. And instead of when you hide it, that's where the problems create because they're guessing. They're creating things in their heads about where things are.
That's
Whereas
right.
if you give them clarity, like, hey, here's, you don't have to tell them everything, but here's how I make an investment decision. I pulled my kids in on investment decisions. One of my youngest sons saved me a ton of money because he asked some questions that I was like, that's a good question. Went and asked him, like, yeah, that does sound too good to be true. And we didn't invest and it went under. So it's like, those are the conversations. It's involving them along the way. And obviously as their maturity level grows, that's when you give them more information. I wouldn't tell a 5-year-old exactly how much money you make and how your investments are. It'll be over their head, but then they're going to go to their friends and be like,
Tell
we
their
have
friends.
so much dollars or whatever. But with everything on the internet, people know what your house is worth. They'll go look it up on Zillow. The kids do that in class because they want to know. So I think it's you need to start sharing and having those open conversations, and share what you know and share what you don't know. Hey, I don't know the answer to this. I'm unsure about this. I'm going to meet with my financial advisor because he'll know, and I can ask those questions. Would you like to come along and be part of that conversation? And then make sure you're continuously learning as well so that you can pass that on. The easiest thing is, do you have a dinner? Do you guys actually sit down for dinner with your family and take the time to have that 30 minutes together? And then what I do is we have what's called our high low learned. What's our high for the day, best moment? What's the low for the day? And what did we learn that day? And it can be anything. It doesn't have to be what you learned in school. It's usually not, because they usually don't remember anything they learned in school, ironically. And so I'll use that to be like particular, like, hey, I learned about this investment strategy or this thing because I go to lunch with a lot of financial advisors. And so those are the kinds of things I can bring up, and then they ask questions about it. So it's creating that open communication so they can feel comfortable with you, because if they don't get that now, it's going to be a lot harder to establish that when they're out of the house and they have bigger questions about those things.
That's right.
So
What I'm
starting
hearing, what I'm
young.
hearing you say is like the coaching aspect of it. You're coaching them. You're not giving them a black or white, do this, don't do this.
I mean, there's obviously some things that would be with, but yeah, it's more of giving them the guidance. Here's my thoughts on it, but here's what you can do. So for instance, my son wanted an e-bike, and my wife and I refused to buy anything electric for mode of transportation because they have pedal bikes and a push scooter. But he came with a plan for his business because he does a lawn mowing business. And so he's like, hey, if I get an e-bike, I can pull my own gear. You guys don't have to drive me around to all the gigs. That's a win for me. Yeah, I'll finance the bike for that. And so we negotiated on that. And I was gone the next night after he did that. I was on a work trip. And I guess the crushing weight of debt was just on his mind the very first day. He's like, I got to send the bike back. I don't know that I'm going to be able to make these payments.
Wow.
And my wife is sitting there like trying to comfort him, but inside she's just like, yes, like, because now I know that when he turns 18 and can get a credit card, he's not going to go blow it on something crazy because he's going to remember this.
That's right.
And so, it takes time. It's really hard to see him struggle or to not get involved or to not make all the decisions. But when you have a moment like that, the payoff is like, okay, it's working. He's learning.
He's learning. Yeah, I get asked this all the time about why we don't teach financials in school. And I'm in my own conversation about why I feel like it would be more important to do it at home. And one of those is that our kids mirror what they see, not what they're told. And they can go to school and learn whatever, but if it's not being modeled at home, they more than likely won't model it themselves, even conceptually, right? It's not the school's job to teach financial literacy and maybe some concepts, but it's really our job as parents. So there are people who have wealth, and you're working with people who are wealthy in the estate planning realm and wealth management realm, and you're having these conversations at a high level. But let's talk about the middle class or upper middle class for people who maybe weren't necessarily raised around wealth, but have money now, and they want to start having these conversations. Where do they start? Because maybe for a lot of people aren't talking about money because they don't know how. And so as a parent, if I wasn't around it, for me, I stepped into the industry to figure this stuff out for myself. But where do they go? Who are you following? Who should they listen to? First of all, shameless plug, listen to Blake and follow Blake and learn from Blake. There's some really cool stuff coming out. But where else can they go to increase their own financial intelligence and emotional intelligence to then be able to model this stuff with their kids?
There's a lot of resources out there, but it's trying to sift through a lot of it. I think the biggest thing is exposing yourself to a lot of it so that you figure out what works for you, because not everything that I do is necessarily going to be right for you and your family. Yes, there's core principles about having emergency savings and, living within your means and those kind of things. But outside of that, what investments work for what your personality is? It may be real estate, it may be private equity, it may be just be stocks and bonds. That's the stuff you have to figure out. So I think you got to read. I think you talk to multiple financial advisors, talk to, if you have more successful people in your, circle of friends, circle of influence, you do that. I don't know that there's necessarily a one place to start, but I think good exposure, and then it's kind of a trial and error thing. What resonates with you?
Mm-hmm.
Like personally, one of the things I know most people just won't agree with me is I don't like retirement accounts. It's just something
I
that
don't either.
for some reason that just has never stuck with me. And so I don't do that, but it doesn't mean it's not bad for somebody else or that it is bad for someone else. It's, you got to figure out what your financial path looks like. I think one of my favorite thing for kids, for teaching kids about some of these concepts, is there's a show called The Tuttle Twins. It started as a book series. Now they have a TV series. It's on Angel Guild, but they talk a lot about like what is the Federal Reserve and what is basic economics and those kind of things, so they can get a broader picture, and then you can watch it together, have a conversation. So
Love that.
that's one resource that comes to mind.
That's great. I love that. I've never heard of them before. So we'll definitely check them out and put them in the show notes. Thanks for that. And I agree with you. Just join them where you are. Watch the show together. Have curious conversations together. And when money can be a place of open, honest conversation versus control and fear, because a lot of parents, you're parenting out of fear. Shift the conversation into open, honest. I know for my son, I used to not so much anymore because he's 17 and doesn't care what I'm doing. But when he was younger, I'd be on my laptop, I'd be in my spreadsheet, I'd be tracking my money, I'd be paying bills, I'd be in my bank account. He's like, "We have that much money?" I'm like, "Yeah, we do," because I was intentional about not wanting to embed the scarcity conversation into him. Like, let's just open it up. Let's be honest. Let's talk about what it means. And I think that's some of the best parenting that we can do.
I think you got to teach the value of a dollar. If they don't have to work for something, they're not going to understand that. But also, if they don't have any idea of what you make versus what bills actually cost, they go to the grocery store, especially now because it's just swipe a card. You don't think about it. You figure out how to pay it when you go to, at the end of the month or whatever. Versus when I was growing up, my parents got me a checking account with a checkbook, and my mom would help me balance it at the end of every month, even though I was just spending on dumb fun stuff.
Yeah.
But like that exercise of like, oh, okay, like I got to put it in every time, make sure I have enough in there before I buy something. I feel like that was a lot easier for me to learn than just swipe, swipe.
Totally. Totally. Yeah. Both of our boys have bank accounts. My 17-year-old bought his own truck. He bought his own car, and now he's selling his truck and he's getting a new truck. And you're right. It's not fun. My husband and I will be sitting on the couch at night. My 17-year-old would come in after work and he's in it. He's in it emotionally. He's resisting us and he wants to throw a 17-year-old tantrum, and we just hold firm. We're like, no, these are principles that you must learn now, that we want you to learn now. And we're sorry it's hard, but this is the time to teach them. So parents, if you get nothing else out of this conversation, teach your kids now, join the conversation now. Because of what I know with neurolinguistic programming, imprinting years is before 7, modeling years is 7 to 14. Now is the time. Can we switch gears, Blake?
Let's do it.
Can you explain to us what a family bank really is and how it works?
So my version of family bank is,
Yeah.
instead of gifting stuff to your kids for what they need, it's you lend them, the money to make it happen. So
Okay.
really, there's three different types of ways that you can buy something. You can save up for it and pay cash for it. You can finance it, or you can get a gift to do it.
Right.
That's really it. Or you get it from someone else. That's how you get things. So it's one of those three things. With any type of scenario you can think of, or I guess maybe it's gift slash rent. Maybe you do that on every interaction with money. That's what you do. So sometimes the answer may be, hey, work for it. I want you to get delayed gratification and pay for it up front.
Yep.
But a situation like this with my son, where he's trying to make more money for his lawn mowing business because he's growing that, and also he's trying to save up for buying his first car. Okay, well, if I make him save up the $600 for his e-bike, that's going to take forever for him to get there, and he's not going to be able to do as many jobs and all that stuff. So it makes sense to have it leveraged, on top of the fact that I want him to learn that concept. And so the family bank is nothing more than, instead of going to a bank an actual financial institution to lend, then you become the bank and you lend it to your kids or your nieces and nephews or whoever else that you want to have an impact on. And so it can be as simple as that. Just like you do it with your kids, direct paperwork, that's what it is. What we do is we take that concept and we grow it a little bit more with our wealthier clients. Now you have just from an estate planning breakdown, if you have like super, super high wealth, most of the families that are over $100 million in net worth, they have what's called their own private family office. And they do
Mm-hmm.
this all the time. They have someone who manages all their investments. They lend to their kids. They do all that stuff. Most people are not going to get to the point where they can afford it. And so what we do is we take those concepts and we bring it into something where more people can afford and do some of those things. And so we use the trusts and the different tools that they have, and we bring it into more of a middle class affordability and create these permanent structures that allow for this same concept to be perpetuated. Now, I don't want to be misunderstood. Gifting is still okay. That doesn't mean you can't give your kids gifts ever. It's just saying be intentional about which things you are doing with that. And so you're not just gifting everything. As soon as your kid turns 16, don't just give them a car.
Yeah.
Make them earn it. Maybe it's okay, I'll buy it, but you're going to make me monthly payments over time to help do that. Great, that works too. We have a hybrid method where we're helping our kids setting up businesses and stuff so they can save up now, and we'll match whatever they pay. They have money saved up for it. And once again, it comes back to what works for your family, but the basic concept is I'm the bank now instead of an actual bank.
Love it, which is less, it's cheaper money. You can borrow
Correct.
it less
Quicker
expensively.
access to money. It doesn't go on your credit report. It
Yep.
helps. You can set the interest rates lower than probably what normal are. So all of those things. And then like for instance, with my dad, he loved being the bank because now he deferred his capital gains over that 5-year period that I paid him instead of recognizing it all in 1 year. So it was still to his advantage as well.
Yeah, and you're helping families figure out the intricacies of those things. What do you do when a kid can't pay you back? What happens then?
Well, so that's the beauty of it having it be in the family. You can be a little bit more merciful. You can spread things out. You can delay some of the payments, whatever. But I'd still make them figure out a way to do it. It might just be okay. I won't charge you interest for the next 6 months while you get your stuff figured out, or while during let's say it's basketball season, they're competitive and there's no way they can have a job. Okay, well, we won't have required payments during that 3-month window because we still want you to do that, but they resume when you can start working again. But you do need to hold firm. Now, what we do on the trust side, when we get a little bit bigger loans and whatnot, we have a third party trustee who's kind of that facilitator. So they're the bad guy, not necessarily mom and dad, but there does need to be accountability. Otherwise, it won't work.
That's right. I agree. Yeah. If they just know in the back of their head, listen, our unconscious mind is not stupid, it's strategic. And so if they just know in the back of their head that they're never going to have to pay it back, they're going to behave differently than if they know somehow they're going to be held accountable.
Exactly.
I love that. What are some of the ways that you're teaching your kids to invest? So they have their own caramel apple business. One of your sons, it sounds like, has his own delivery business. What about investing? Where can parents go to help their kids? One of my favorites is Greenlight because it has different buckets and helps them helps them with cash flow. Where are you sending your kids to invest and learn how to invest?
So another one is trycrew.com. They're similar to Greenlight. So I happen to know the guys who started it. So I like them. It's a very similar platform.
Okay.
But I think with investments, it's, starting to have them be part of the conversation when you are doing stuff. And so like, hey, here's what I'm looking at for investing, or here's my financial advisor, have them explain some of the stuff. We just actually set up the first investment account for my older son because he's just looking at it. He's like, when I get to be 14 or 15, I can get a real consistent job. I can earn more money. But he's like, I don't know that I'm going to have enough for the car that I want. So how do I grow my money faster? And so he's looking at doing some index funds, but it initially was just, hey, open it up. You get the sign up bonus for what you put in there. And it's in a higher interest rate than the checking account he had it in before. And so, I think it's hard. Like there's not a, hey, here's how you do it. I have some basics in the program we're coming out with, but it's really exposure about what you're doing and then letting them make that decision. A great one. I know like a lot of financial platforms will have paper trading um, courses where so they can have an account. They're not actually trading money, but they can pretend like they're investing money, so they get the hang of what they're doing and what those costs would be for every transaction that's traded, and what the market does. And so I'd say do that before they actually invest their money.
Yeah, that's a great idea. They do that in some schools where they have those programs and in college and trading schools actually will have you do some of that work before you actually put your money in the market. So I love that as a fundamental. Um, Very cool. I love what you're doing, Blake. I think that this conversation is so important and disruptive in the world of money. Why not just open it up? Why not just talk about it? Why not address our fears and our emotions? I know I'm more on the emotional side of money and helping people identify those things, but you're doing both. Like you're teaching your kids. You've got some very strategic ways that you're doing that. I agree with you that spoiling anyone doesn't work over time. I know it's a triggering conversation when it comes to money, but it's so, so important. So thank you for being here today on Real Money.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. I love this topic. I think it's vitally important. I think the reason people, especially the professionals, is it's easy to talk about with how much money we can make for this person, or in my world, how much estate taxes we can save, how much money can we pass on to the next generation without having that taxed or taken away, because that's a calculable 100%. This is if we do this. These conversations don't guarantee anything. Even if you do everything that I've talked about with my kids, I still don't know if they're going to turn out good. They have their agency.
Okay.
They're going to be able to make those decisions. So it's really hard from that perspective because you don't have a guaranteed outcome, and it is a lot more work. But I think it's a lot more worth it to give them that leg up and give them that chance to succeed, because I'm not always going to be there for them.
I agree. And to your point, and to the book of, to the point of the what would the Rockefellers do and what we're discovering with money is that mindset is generational. And let's do our best. Money may or may not be there. Most legacies are gone within 3 generations. But if we can couple it with mindset, then hopefully what you're teaching them will pass down to your grandkids and your great grandkids. And how cool would that be?
Yeah, and that's one of the beauties of the family bank is we can set it up so it is multi-generational. Trust can go on for hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah, it's so cool. All right, so I end the show with something more fun so our listeners can get to know you more personally. Again, check him out on LinkedIn. We'll put this all in the show notes so that you can get a really good feel for the family and the family dynamic. And Blake is expecting a baby boy here. When is he due?
April.
In April. So one more boy added to the family. But my favorite game to play with kids is this or that, or on road trips. So we're going to play this or that. Are you ready?
All right, I like it.
All right. Pizza night or popcorn and a movie?
Ooh, pizza. I need something
Okay.
more filling.
Okay. Beach house or family farm?
Beach house.
Board games or video games?
Card games, not board games.
Okay, card games. Yeah. We play trash. That's our favorite card game as a family. We can play it for hours and hours and hours. Road trip or airplane adventure?
Airplane. I hate driving. We have a rule that if it's over 6 hours, we fly no matter what.
Right on. Camping or hotel resort?
I'm kind of a 50-50, but if it's a family thing, it is definitely a hotel. My wife doesn't camp unless there's a shower and a working
Yeah, my
toilet.
husband's the same way. Ice cream or cookies?
Ice cream. Chocolate.
Yeah, chocolate ice cream. I love it. Baseball or football?
Football.
Yeah. Theme park or national park?
National. Well, normally I would say national park because there's less crowds, but lately they've been so crowded it's about the same. So I don't know.
Do you have a favorite theme park?
We loved Universal in Florida because we're big Harry Potter fans, and we have a deal with our kids that if they've read all the books, then they get a one-on-one trip with mom and dad to go to Harry Potter World. So
Oh,
my younger one just finished not too long ago, so we gotta find a time to go to the new Epic World they just opened up.
amazing. I love that. All right, so we're going to split the camps here. Dogs or cats?
Neither. I'm not a pet
No?
person.
Do your boys want a dog or a cat?
They want dog. They want a dog, but they've. My wife's sister lives within a mile of us. My sister lives within 10 minutes of us, and they both have dogs, so they get plenty of that way. The only way they get a dog, my wife has said, is if I die, then they'll get a dog to replace me.
Well, that's good to know, Blake.
Yeah. So if I'm off, that's probably why, and they get a dog.
They're gonna get a dog. I love it. All right, last question. Big family reunion or quiet weekend getaway?
Depends which side of the family, but usually I'd rather stay at home and just be us.
I love it. I love it. I love it. In addition to your LinkedIn page, where would you like listeners to go to find more about you and your work?
Yeah, our website is yourfb as in yourfamilybank.com. So that's probably the best one. And then, yeah, I am on Instagram. I think it's Blake Johnson Esquire, Blake B. Johnson Esquire. LinkedIn's probably the best. That's where I'm the most active.
All right, and that's in the show notes. And here's our call to action today, you guys. If you don't want to raise spoiled kids, you cannot leave it by chance. Get in tune with your mindset and the reason that you're making the decisions in the first place. Build your family bank. Disrupt the cycle of entitlement for the next generation. Blake, thank you so much for being here. This was a real fun conversation.
Thanks, Lisa. I know we've been trying to do this for a while, so it's good to finally have that conversation.
Yeah, let us know. So let us know what you're learning about the family bank system. Let us know what questions you have, and we'll see you next time on Real Money. Thanks for joining us.